So good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Data Analytics with Career Guidance course. Today, we are in day 9 of SQL Server training. Today, we'll understand about constraints, primary key, and foreign key. So first, let's understand what is this constraints, then primary key, and then foreign key. Let's go to SQL Server. I also have a notepad, which I'll be sharing it with you, which talks about the foreign key and the primary key and also about the constraints. Let us first enable our database. So go here, we'll take a new query window, use TP, then we'll say go. Let's run this. All right. So now let's start understanding about the constraint. Constraint means applying the restrictions on the column. There are so many ways where we can restrict. That is, suppose let's create one table. A quick table will create, say, create table. Let's say employee details. Okay. Assume that we are actually creating one table. All of you, please concentrate and understand this is very important because this you will be working and you'll be creating these kind of constraints. You'll be applying the constraints in the beginning itself. Otherwise, also I'll tell you if you've already created the table, how to apply the constraints. I kept this topic in the end because whenever you're practicing, whenever you're working, you are learning. It is good you learn without any validations. So after that, once you understand the complete concept and then you understand the main thing that is validations, it will be easy for you to work. Okay, right. Now I'm creating one simple table, a very simple table where I don't give any constraints. Right. So we'll try to add some columns, employee ID, employee name, employee age, employee gender, employee date of birth. Okay. So I just used only few columns here. Let's not take, because for us, we're not concentrating on the number of columns what we are creating. We're just concentrating on the constraints. Okay. Right. The first thing is about giving the data type. This is also a kind of validations. That is, when I say employee ID, I want the column to have mixture of text and numbers. So in that case, I'll be giving characters. I'm saying nchar, that is number of characters, we'll say 6 or 10 or whatever you feel that your ID actually captures. Let me mention as 10. Name, I'll say varchar, variable characters, let's say 50. Then age, integer. Then gender, I'll say char. Let's say we can use it as 1 because we can use M or F for male or female. I'll just mention it as 10 for time being. And for date of birth, we'll say date. So this is first step of validations, because when I enter the data, I need to know what kind of data I'm actually entering in each columns. The next constraint, okay, the constraint means whether this column should have null values or not. Now, for example, employee ID, okay, this should be not null. Why? Because all the records what we're entering should have employee IDs. But I'll create the table without applying any constraint. I'll just select this and I'll say Fi. You can see there is a table which got created without any constraints, no restrictions, nothing. Only thing what we're given here is the data type where we have to enter the exact data types only. Now let's say refresh. I'll go to this database. We have our database here, table. And here, if you go to the tables, here I have this employee details. Okay. Now I'll go here. I'll click on this. Here, I'll click on columns. Here you can see nchar, null, 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 all are actually null. So here I can enter, I can enter the data or I can leave it blank. So I've given this nchar because I'll be entering some characters as well here. Okay, suppose if you think I have only numbers, then I can use only numbers. Since I am actually using the data that is with the characters, I'm using this nchar. Okay, otherwise I could have used numbers only. Right. Now we understood about a very simple table what we can create, that is without any constraints. Now I'll delete this table. Okay, we can alter it, but I want people to understand how important it is. While creating itself, we have to think about all this. So we can alter it. I'll tell you how to alter the tables when you already have created it. But now we'll just concentrate on we'll just concentrate on how to create. Okay, let me delete the table. We can use the command that is drop. If you want, you can use the command that is drop table. This way also we can use drop table if exist emp details. Okay, so this way also we can use. All right, now let me take the same table. I'm using the same table because I've already deleted. If you're not deleted, you cannot create the table because it will become duplicate. So it won't allow duplicate tables with the same name. Okay. All right, now I'll apply the constraint. I'll go here, I'll say not null. By default, if you're not mentioning anything, that is, you're not mentioning any constraint, then it will be null. Now I mentioned it as not null. So here I have not mentioned any constraint. So this will be null values. You have seen that in the previous table when we created. Now I can apply not null wherever you feel that I want the data to be entered compulsorily. Now I want this name, then I'll say not. Not interested in age, gender, date of birth, just leave it as is. Now, if I select this and say FI, that is I'm creating a refresh, I'll get the table here, employee details. Let's go here, tables, employee details. Let me click here. See, not null and not null. Right? So we understood about how we can actually restrict the user to compulsorily enter the data. That is, we are just telling them that employee ID and employee name are compulsory. You have to enter. Right. So this is another way of applying the constraint so that the user should enter the data for these two columns. For these three columns, he can ignore if he's not interested to enter. Right. So this is another way of creating the table, that is with restrictions. Next is, let me delete this. Okay, again, I'm telling, I'm just deleting so that I'm using the same table here. Otherwise, I have to keep creating multiple tables. Now, I will copy this. I will just observe. This is a master table. What is a master table? Master table means it is a table which will have a unique records. When I say unique records, employee ID is unique for each person. So I'm collecting some information for each employee with their employee ID, which I can recognize. Let's say there is a name, okay? Let's say Manjunath. There can be many Manjunaths in a company. Now, how to recognize this Manjunath? There are so many Manjunath here. So for each person, there will be something called as employee ID, which will recognize individually. So that should be unique, the unique ID. So whenever you create a table and you feel that it is master table means simple. You're just trying to collect some unique records. So it can be employee details. product details, project details, or it can be student details. So wherever you feel that it's a unique record, so make sure that you'll use this master table and you'll have one ID which is unique. So when you feel that there are some records which are unique and that record, that column should not be null, then I'll be using something called as primary key. Primary key. Now, what is this primary key? Primary key means it is the main key. Okay, it's a main key where we can recognize the entire record. Okay, see it says primary key is a single field or combination of fields that is used to uniquely define a record. Any field of primary key cannot have a null value, and a table can have, this is wrong actually, can have multiple primary keys. It should actually it should have one primary key, but it can have multiple primary keys as well. I'll show you that as well. Now, given the syntax, I'll share this notepad with you. So here I have given the syntax here, column, data type, then null or not null, and then primary key. Okay, here I've given the example, same example I've taken here, say primary key. Now, you just see, I will select this and I'll say FI. You can see that the table is created. We saw this table when we created, it says not null. That is, we cannot enter null, we cannot leave the column blank. Now, when I give primary key, we have many advantages. That is, it is not null. And also, this should be unique. You cannot have duplicate values. Now, let me refresh this. Go here, the database, then we'll take July tables. I have this employee table here. Let me click on this. Now you just see, I'll click on this columns. See, employee ID, PK, that means primary key, not null. Here I've not mentioned, but still it is saying not null. That means you cannot leave the column blank. All right. Now I can see there is one small key, black color key. This, whenever you see this one, this is primary key. Let me click on this keys. You can see that there is one ID which you can see automatically for the primary key. You will get this ID. I didn't mention anywhere any ID here. So automatically there is a unique ID which gets created for any table when I create a primary key. Right. Now, this primary key, we can mention, say here I have this PK underscore some keys there. So we can mention this primary key or we can modify this. Just go here and say rename. Say you can just click here, double click, or you can click on this, right click and say rename. We can rename this as well, right? Okay. This is another way. This is one way of creating primary key. Again, let me delete this. Like I'm just dropping all the table because I want you to understand while creating the table itself how to apply primary key. I'll tell you how to modify that as well. Let's go back. The next. Okay. Now I want to apply a primary key with my own primary key ID. I'll take the same table. I'm taking the same table. This time, I'll not apply the primary key here. Let's refresh. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll go here. I will apply the constraint. So here you can see there is a key what I have to use, constraint. The syntax is here constraint, constraint name, primary key. Now I mentioned that we can have multiple columns. This is actually primary key. We can have only one. That is when you have only one column, but you can apply for multiple columns. If you're applying for multiple columns, use this syntax constraint, whatever name you are giving the constraint name, then primary key and mention the columns. This should be done in the end of the table. Say, just copy this constraint. I will say EMP PK. This is my primary key. You had seen that we had one primary key automatically getting generated. Now I'm using this emp underscore pk, then I'll say primary key. Then after this, I need to mention on which column I'm trying to create primary key. Right. So I applied constraint, I given one key, and then here you can see primary key with the column name. Now let me select this, press F5, commands completed successfully. So here I use the primary key directly in the ID itself, that is in the column itself. Now I'm using with separate, a syntax here. I created, let me refresh, I'll go here and then check how the table is. You can see my table, employee details, columns. You can see again, I have the similar kind of thing, but when I go to these keys, see, whatever name I had given here, same name I'm getting here. So make sure that this is unique key, because if you have multiple primary keys, make sure that you'll have unique key. All right, this is for single column. Let me drop this table. Copy. Again, we'll create a table with the multiple primary keys. Let's say location. Okay, I'm creating one table. I need to have the location of this employee, but the location, already there is a table for, storing the locations. So I'll go here, say, car, let's say. Let's assume that I want one more ID here, one more primary key, location ID. Now, what does this mean? I'll tell you. The employee along with location ID should be unique. Whenever you feel that the combination of the columns, okay, should be unique, then I can use multiple primary keys. In this case, employee ID, let me open an Excel file to explain you in a simple way. I know it will be slightly confusing, but I'll tell you, see, employee ID, EMP001. I will take some 5 employees. Okay, this is unique, this is right. But what if I have some duplicate values like this? This is invalid in this case. In the first table, what we created, that is single table primary key. But in this case, it is valid. Why? Because the combination of this EMP001 and location ID 001 with the employee ID 001 with location ID 006, this is valid. That means this is primary key. So the combination of these two should be unique. So that is what it says here. So whenever you think that there is some, records to be entered, say employee are available in various different locations, and that should be unique, then you can have one more ID here with the combination of these two should be unique. In that case, what should I do? Constraint like this, and here say comma, and I'll with this put it here. That's it. Now mention the primary key. Here I'll give the keyword, then mention all the column names, whichever you feel that the primary key has to be applied. Let me select this. I'll press F5. I'm executing it. Now my table is created with multiple primary keys. Now let me refresh. Done. Now let's go and check how it looks. Database. Here I have this tables, employee tables. See, 2 primary keys. Then here, if I go to this key, you can see I have this EMP key. So likewise, I can use multiple primary keys. Right? Next we'll see this for multiple columns we just created. Next we'll see, suppose I have created a table. I forgot to give primary key. So how to apply primary key? Okay, so now let me drop this table. Now I'm trying to create a table. Let me take this first table. Here I don't have the primary key. I want to add a primary key for this table. Okay, I forgot. I just created. Now you just observe the constraint here is we have not given any constraint here, like not null or something. By default, it is null. Now I need to add primary key for this employee ID column. I'll use this alter table. What is the table name? Employee details. Let's copy this and I'll put it. Alter table name. I'll try to add the constraint. Add constraint. The constraint name and the primary key. And if you have multiple columns, we can add. Now, in my case, in this table, I'll say add constraint. I'll give a primary key as employee ID EK. Primary key. Okay. Now, what is the column? See, go here. Now, you just see the syntax is perfect. Everything is fine. Alter table, I'm saying table name. Add constraint. That is, I'm adding a constraint that is employee ID underscore PK. I'm giving one ID there, primary key, and I'm using this employee ID. Now, you see, if I run this, it'll throw error. I'll tell you why. Whenever you're creating a table and you're trying to apply the primary key on a column, that should have not null constraint. That means it should not be a null column. Now, I try to create one primary key on this employee table. Now, I forgot to add not null here. So what should I do? And now you cannot enter, you cannot apply primary key on this column unless and until it is changed to not null. Then what I'll do? I'll go here. I'll say alter table employee details. I'll try to change the, the type here. That is, I'll make it as not null. How? Say alter table name. Then I'll say alter column. Alter employee nchar 10 not null. Okay. So what I did, I'm just mentioning that it should be not null now. Let me copy. Let me select this, say F5, say now this table employee ID becomes not null. Now I'll execute the same query what we had written. See. So if you forget to apply primary key, make sure that this column which you are trying to apply the primary key should be not null. If not, then first change that to not null and then apply the primary key. Let's go and check. I'll say refresh. Here, if you go and check database and tables, and here I have this employee details. See, I have this primary key, and here you can see now apply. Likewise, you don't have to bother. Suppose if you already created the table and if you feel that I need a primary key to be applied, first thing, check that this column is not null. If it is like having null, then change that to not null and then make sure that you use the syntax, add constraint, and then you can add the primary key, right? So these are the ways where we can apply the primary key. Sometimes I'm entering some data. I want to disable temporarily the primary key. Why should we disable? Sometimes what happens, if there are some tables which are referring the main table, what happens is we cannot enter some data, or say we cannot delete some records. when it is actually referred with other table. So, but temporarily, if you want to disable, okay, for time being, we'll disable and then we can enable. So we can disable the primary key. So for that, we have this syntax alter index constraint name. We should be aware of the constraint name. So what is constraint name? This one. Okay, the constraint name on which table? Okay, let me go here and say alter index, and we'll mention the constraint name on table name employee details. Okay, I'll say disable. Let me select this F5. Now we have disabled the primary key. We have not deleted it. Understand? We have not deleted it. You have disabled for time being. That is temporary. Let me refresh. Let's go here and check the table employee details. We'll go to this table. We have this employee details table. And here we can see column still primary key is there, but for time being, you have disabled it. Everything is there. The employee ID will have the primary key, but it is disabled. Disabled in the sense for time being, we have restricted all the validations what can be done on the primary key, right? Next, suppose after you feel that you are doing some validations, checkings or something, then if you feel that I want to enable it, then mention it rebuild. Same thing. I'll copy the same thing, but here we'll say rebuild. Just say rebuild. Select F5. Now all the whatever are the principles, the rules, everything is there for the primary key. It will be applied again on the table. Now it will act again like a primary key. Okay, so understand this is not deleting, this is actually disabling. Temporarily, it will restrict all the primary key activities. Drop. Suppose if you think I want to drop, I want to remove. Okay, like what we have this drop table name. Similarly, we have this drop constraint name you have to specify, right? Now here I'll say alter. We should say alter because we are trying to delete primary key which is already applied. Now I'll say alter table name. Then I'll say drop. So the constraint, we have this constraint. I'll take the same thing. Drop constraint name. Just mention, say drop constraint name. Now let me select say F5. See, now let's go here. I'll say refresh and go and check the table. We have this employee details columns. See, right? So likewise, we can drop primary key as well. Right. Now let's go back. We'll create the table again. Let me create this. Sorry, to drop this, first we'll drop and then we'll create. Right. Now the table is created. Now I have one table, that is employee details table, where I'll be entering all the employee details. Now I'll create one more table. Let's say we'll create one project table. In this project table, we have the employees who are working on each project. Now I want to apply such a way that, say, for example, there are 10 employees and out of which 3 are actually working on one project. So if you want to assign some resource for that particular project, then only those who are there in the company only should work on the project. That means if I say people who are working in the company, that means the details is there in a table. So I don't have to take the entire details of the table. I just have to take only the IDs so that I can recognize each employee by the unique ID. So what I'll do, I'll go here, I'll create one table. Okay. We call it as transition table where we can have all the data. So I'll not type, I'll just copy this instead of typing. Let me type it. Okay. Create project details. Okay, let's say project ID and char 10 not null. Okay, and then I'll take this employee ID from employee. Okay, MP ID and char. I'll make it as 6. Okay, but just purposely I'm using this 6. I'll say null. Enough. Now, let's say I have only 2 columns. I want to apply foreign key. Now, what is foreign key? Foreign key is nothing but the referential key. Foreign key is used to enforce referential integrity within your SQL Server database. It specifies that the value is one table must have, appear in another table. That is, the refer table is called as parent table, while the table having foreign key is called the child table. The foreign key is the child table will generally reference a primary key in the parent table. Let me tell you what it is. Now let's assume that this has got primary key and this is called as the parent table because I have the ID here. So in this table, what I'm creating, the project details will be referring the main table, that is the parent table. This is called as the child table. When I say parent table, that means it's a main table and this is the child table which is referring now whatever records I'm actually using here, okay, for that employee ID, that should be available in parent table. Let's say employee ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That means I cannot take employee 11 because employee 11 is not existing. The same thing when you try to delete this table, you cannot delete unless and until you delete all the records in this particular table, which we refer the IDs. So both will be interlinked once you give the reference. All right. Now I want to apply the constraint on this. The constraint, the syntax will be constraint when I have to give a foreign key name. Then foreign key, I have to give which column, say like this. Go here. Constraint, I'll give a foreign key name. I'll say employee ID, foreign key. Okay. On. So employee ID, I'm trying to apply the foreign key on which column? That is on this column, that is employee ID. Here we have to mention foreign key on this column. We have multiple columns to refer. You can specify multiple columns as. So I'm mentioning it as constraint name, foreign key, and I'm using this columns. But I also have to refer because this is foreign key. So I need to refer. So reference, I'll go here. I'll say a reference on which table? References on EMP details table. Okay. The parent table. On which ID? Employee ID. Okay. Now here I'm trying to generate the reference, apply the reference for this table which we have created just now. When I execute this, there will be an error. I'll tell you what is that error. We'll read that error. Say unknown object product details use create drop alter. Okay. Create null. Sorry. Create table. Right. Create table. Now if I say FI, see there is an error. What is that? Incorrect syntax near keyword on. Create table. Where is that? F5. Right. Now this is the error what I was actually telling you. Foreign key employee ID refers invalid table employee details. What is the table name? So many errors. Okay. Let me run this. Okay. column employee details is not the same length. So this is the error, sorry, I wanted to tell you. Column employee details, employee ID is not the same length or scale referring the project details dot employee ID, okay, in the foreign key. So this is the error what I wanted to mention. That's why I just gave it as 6. Now, if you just go here and check, the employee ID has got the length of 10, but here I'm mentioning it as 6. So what I was just trying to tell you is, forget about all the other errors. That was just syntax errors. This error, whenever you're actually trying to refer a table with an ID, that is the column, make sure that the column what you're trying to refer will have the same length. You have this 10, you have the 6. It should not be like that. It should have the same length. Now let me try to create. See? Okay. So this is how actually we can create the foreign key. So what is foreign key? Foreign key is nothing but it is referring another table for getting the details, that is the data. Let's go and check how it looks. Refresh. And here I'll say database. And if I just scroll down to the table, where is the project details? Columns. See, you can see a key here, which is towards left hand side. You can see the primary key will be heading towards right hand side, and the foreign key is white color with the head, that the whatever you call it as the beginning of the key, that is showing the direction of left hand side. Right, so this is foreign key. There you can go to this keys, you can see that I have this. All right, suppose if you think I want to disable, enable, we can go here. You can disable or enable the primary key as well. Say enable, I'll just copy the same thing. Here we'll say check constraint. So what is that? I'm just changing the table here and the ID here. Okay, let me execute this. See, just trying to enable and disable. Say for disabling, we'll say no check. Go here, copy the same thing, put it here. I'll say no check. And then we'll run this. This is disable temporarily. Suppose if you want to drop, then say alter table, table name, drop constraint, constraint name. Say alter table, I'll take this table name. And here I'll say drop. Copy same thing. I'll just change this to select. Now the foreign key is drop. So likewise, I can apply the constraint or I can remove the constraint, delete the constraint. Depending on my requirement, I can actually use this primary key and foreign key. To make it more simple, I'll have tables where the tables which are master table should have primary key, so that we'll have the restrictions from the user while entering. It should always be unique values with not null values. So if you want to do that, then we'll be using this primary key, and primary key is actually used so that the IDs, whatever we enter in that particular column, is referred in another table. Now coming to this transition table where we have the foreign key, that should always refer the main table, so that we are not entering or we are not allowing the user to enter the invalid IDs. So I gave an example of employee. There are 10 employees from employee 1 to employee 10. So if you want to enter 11th employee, that record should be available in primary table. That is primary table in the sense the master table. Okay, so to have this process, primary key and foreign key is compulsory. And if you apply these restrictions, if you apply these constraints, so what happens is the table, the data what we're collecting will be valid. So you don't have to go and again do the validations, clean the data. So all these are actually used for while collecting the data. It will actually reduce the redundant values, the duplicate values, or invalid records what the user is entering. Okay. All right. So this is what we have for today. Now I want 1 minute of yours. So tell me, how was today's session? And then after that, I'll take the questions. Quickly, I want all of you. How was today's session? All right. So thank you so much, people. Now you can ask me if you have any questions. So meanwhile, there is one from Rakshit Gowda. Employee ID is saying that it should be int. So Rakshit, as I mentioned, employee ID, if you think you want only numbers, you can use int. If you think there is some characters also involved in that, then it will be included in that, then you should use nchar or varchar, depending on your way of entering the data. But employee IDs will always be like fixed number of characters. It can be 6, 10. It depends on the company IDs. So usually the employee IDs will have with characters. All right. Any other questions, people? All right. So if you don't have any questions, constraints are at table level only. Yes, constraints are at table level only. Constraints are at table level only. All right, people. So tomorrow we'll finish this SQL Server sessions, and there will be a certificate for the people who have attended all the sessions. So I'll be giving you the link tomorrow. Please attend. If you're not attending, then again, if you're not entering that particular link, the details, then you'll not be getting the certificate. So please do attend. I'll be sending you the link so that you guys can actually enter that and collect your certificate. And also you'll have surprise bonus gift as we always give after the sessions. Okay, I'll be giving you some surprise gifts as well. So you can attend, collect your certificate. For that certificate, you need to enter the details, and also you can collect your surprise gifts as well. Okay, after that, we'll have some sessions on the career guidance, and I'll see what all best things I can give you in one sessions. After that, you'll be getting people who have attended all the sessions or 80% of the sessions, they'll be getting the complete data analytics certificate. That's a complete certificate combination of your all the other courses what you have done. That's a different certificate. So tomorrow you'll be getting the individual SQL Server certificate. Okay, the data analytics certificate you'll be getting after 2 days, that is after your career guidance class. All right, so I want all of you to attend the sessions. Right, people, have a great day. Thank you so much. And I hope all the sessions from last 2 months, what we are doing, it is very useful for you. At least not for the certificate. I feel that you guys have at least, gained some knowledge. Okay, so that is what I expect, that you people have gained some knowledge. Okay. All right. So Bharat, the Python, yes, we are working on that. I'm working on the timings actually. I have a lot of other things, to do as well. But as promised, Python will be there. We are trying out the timings actually, because most of the people actually have requested saying that the timing 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. is very difficult. So I'm just trying out with the timings. Let me check. Okay, if I have time in the evening, let me plan for the sessions in the evening. For sure, we'll plan accordingly. Okay, but yes, Python will be there. I will take the sessions. Okay, right, people, have a great day. Thank you so much. See you guys tomorrow with the final class of our SQL Server. Okay, Bharat, machine learning, it's slightly difficult for me because I'm not getting a good trainer who actually can do this for for free. Okay, so I'm just trying out. People are charging heavily, so let me see if anybody comes forward for taking the sessions. For sure, I'll arrange the class. Okay, that will do. Right. So thank you so much, people. See you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.